All right, welcome to the explainer. Now, I want you to forget the bonnets and the ball gowns for just a second, because today we're going to dive into something different. We're talking about the brilliant and, yeah, often brutal economic engine that's really powering one of the most famous love stories ever told, Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. So, let's just start with this wonderfully cynical take from Elizabeth Bennet's best friend, Charlotte Lucas. She says, happiness in marriage is entirely a matter of chance. And, for her, and honestly for most women back in Jane Austen's world, the path to the altar, it just wasn't a fairy tale, not at all. It was a high-stakes gamble. And believe me, happiness was not a guaranteed prize. In fact, for a lot of women, it was way less about romance and much, much more about just raw survival. This quote from the novel, it just cuts right to the chase, doesn't it? Marriage wasn't really a choice. It was a career path. It was the only honorable provision, as they called it, for a woman who was well-educated but didn't have a lot of money to her name. It was how you secured your future, period. So, yeah, this all sets the stage for what you can basically think of as a high-stakes marriage market. Seriously. For the Bennet sisters and all their friends, finding a husband, it wasn't some personal, romantic quest. No way. It was an urgent economic necessity. And Jane Austen, she is incredibly specific about the money. So let's talk numbers. £5,000. That is the annual income of the new hot bachelor in town, Mr. Bingley. Now, to put that into perspective for you, we're talking millions in today's money. So his arrival in town, it's basically like an IPO announcement for every single local family with an unmarried daughter. And you know who understands these stakes better than anyone? Mrs. Bennet. Oh, yeah. She's got 5 daughters to marry off, and here's the kicker. Because of this legal rule called an entail, their family home isn't going to them. Nope. It's going to be inherited by some distant male cousin. So for her, Mr. Bingley's arrival isn't just a social event. It's a business opportunity. He's not a person. He's a walking, talking solution to her massive financial problem. There's a phrase in the novel that just sums it all up perfectly. Marriage was the pleasantest preservative from want. What does that even mean? Well, it was the only socially acceptable way for a woman to avoid a future of just poverty and having to depend on relatives. That's the cold, hard reality that's framing every single romantic interaction in this book. Okay, so into this really high-pressure environment step our 2 main players, our protagonists. And their first impressions of each other are, to put it mildly, famously disastrous. It's a train wreck, and it sets up the entire central conflict of the novel. So picture this. At their very first meeting, Mr. Darcy dismisses Elizabeth, loud enough for her to hear, by the way, as merely tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me. Ouch. It is just an absolutely crushing verdict. He's totally dismissing her based on a snap judgment. And this, right here, is his pride on full, unapologetic display. And her reaction? Well, this quote just captures it perfectly. She says, "I could easily forgive his pride if he had not mortified mine." Oof. Her own pride, her sense of self-respect is just deeply, deeply wounded. And this is it. This is the moment that cements her prejudice against him. It's a bias that's going to color how she sees every single thing he does for most of the book.
What's interesting is the novel itself kind of gives us the key to understanding all of this through the bookish sister, Mary Bennet. She makes this really crucial distinction between pride and vanity. See, pride is all about your own opinion of yourself, your self-worth. But vanity, that's about what you want other people to think of you. It's needing their approval. So Darcy's core flaw is pride, but other characters, like that ridiculous Mr. Collins, he's suffering from a major overdose of vanity.
So, here's the thing. While they're both proud, their pride works in completely opposite ways. Think of it like this. Elizabeth's pride is defensive. It's like a shield she uses to protect her self-respect in a world that is constantly judging her. Darcy's pride, on the other hand, is offensive. It's a wall built from his high social rank that's designed to keep other people out. And that right there, that is why they misunderstand each other so completely at first. Okay, now to really get these characters, we have to understand the unwritten rules of the game they're all playing. It's fascinating, and a huge part of this was the whole idea of leisure and what you actually did with all your free time. See, for the upper classes, the people who didn't actually have to work for a living, how you spent your free time was, well, everything. It wasn't about kicking back and relaxing. Oh no. It was a constant public performance. It was a way to show off your character, your education, your inner virtue. It was a moral indicator. And you can see this so clearly in what the characters do for fun or not for fun. You've got Mr. Hurst, who just eats and sleeps. I mean, the guy's basically a moral void. Then there's Caroline Bingley, who only pretends to read just to catch Darcy's eye, which totally reveals how phony she is. But then you look at Elizabeth and Darcy. What do? They go for long walks, they read, they have witty conversations. Their activities show they have rich, complex inner lives. They have depth. And in a way, you can already see they're kind of made for each other. All right, so this whole conflict between love and economics, it all comes to a boiling point when Elizabeth gets not one, but two marriage proposals. And let me tell you, each one is a complete and utter catastrophe in its own special way. First up, her cousin, the unbelievably pompous Mr. Collins. And he doesn't talk about love, not for a second. Instead, he lays out a business case. He literally lists the reasons, noting her small fortune, and basically concluding that, hey, you're probably not going to get a better offer. Can you imagine? It's supposed to sound practical, but it is just completely and totally insulting. And her rejection of him is, wow, it's just incredible for the time. She completely refuses to play the part of the coy, elegant female who's supposed to pretend to be shy. Instead, she demands to be treated as a rational creature who has her own feelings and her own integrity. She chooses self-respect over the financial security he's offering. It's a huge moment. And then comes Darcy's proposal. And somehow it is even more disastrous. He confesses that he loves her, but then he spends most of the speech listing all the reasons he shouldn't love her. You know, her family's not good enough, their social standing is too low. I mean, he is literally insulting her and her entire family while asking her to marry him. It's unbelievable. So you can imagine Elizabeth's rejection is one of the most blistering, epic takedowns in all of literature. I mean, just fueled by her wounded pride and all this prejudice that's been building up, she tells him flat out that he is the last man in the world she could ever be convinced to marry. It's an absolute, total, humiliating shutdown. But you know what? This incredibly painful, awkward, humiliating moment, it's the novel's crucial turning point. It's the rock bottom that forces both Elizabeth and Darcy to finally confront their own flaws. They have to re-examine everything they thought they knew, not just about each other, but about themselves. So the big question is, how on earth do they get from that total disaster to a happy ending? Well, it boils down to three key things. First, Darcy writes this letter that reveals the truth about his past, and it just shatters Elizabeth's prejudice. Second, she ends up visiting his massive estate, Pemberley, and she gets to see a totally different side of him, his true, kind nature. And finally, when her sister's scandalous elopement threatens to ruin the entire family, it's Darcy who secretly steps in to save the day, proving his character beyond any doubt. And then comes the second proposal. Just contrast this with his first attempt. It's night and day. He's been humbled. This time, it's perfect. There's no mention of her inferior status, nothing like that. Instead, he just simply states his love and humbly, beautifully puts all the power in her hands. And with that, of course, Elizabeth can finally accept. She finds a partner she truly loves and deeply respects. It's a union that manages to satisfy the harsh economic demands of her world and the deep emotional needs of her own heart. She really does get it all in the end. And in the end, I think this is the question that really makes Pride and Prejudice so completely timeless. It forces all of us to think about that delicate, tricky balance between our personal desires and the social and economic realities that shape our lives. And that negotiation, well, that's something that is just as real and just as relevant today as it was 200 years ago.